There was a quote in an interview with Sam Altman the other day talking about the changing of what fraud will look like when AI can copy it. At the moment, AI can copy a person's voice. So you have these, fraud cases where people ring up somebody pretending to be their child saying, "Mom, Dad, I need help. Please help me." And it's just sickeningly abusive. And but then when AI will be able to mimic a person, so you wouldn't know if you are on Zoom with me or if you are on Zoom with AI pretending to be me.
Hello and welcome to the Intelligence Advantage podcast, where we talk to the movers and shapers in the investigation and intelligence space. My name is Gary Miller. I've been an investigative lawyer for nearly half a century, and I'm also the chairman of the IFG, a network of international investigative and asset recovery lawyers. I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined today by my first lady investigator. There are not many of them around, but I am hunting them down and making sure that they get full exposure on the Intelligence Advantage, as indeed they deserve. I'm delighted to be joined by Jessica Miller, no relation, but a great surname, if I may say, Jessica, who is the founder and director of her own intelligence investigative boutique and has been in this space for over 15 years. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. So I normally start off with different questions for different people, but I think with you, having looked at your background, you speak 6 languages. Is that right, Jessica?
English, Spanish, French, Italian, and Russian. And I'm trying with Arabic at the moment. But yeah, a bit of a polyglot.
And would it be fair to say that the way in which you started learning languages was always with the view of being some kind of investigative person, being in that industry, or was it just you wanted to be multilingual?
I really enjoy language. I enjoy languages. I enjoy how they are often a representative of a culture, how things are phrased. It informs how people see the world. And I think it goes back to childhood story. I had a friend at primary school who was from Germany, and I was invited, so I was about 5 or 6. And I was invited around to his house for tea after school. And he and his mum just spoke German the whole time. And he would speak English to me, obviously. They were speaking German. I didn't speak any German. I found this so stressful. I just started crying and my mum had to come pick me up.
That's a great story.
I think the love of language probably comes from a fundamental fear of missing out.
Okay. No, that's understandable. But clearly you've got an unbelievable ear for it, which does help. So tell us a little bit about what made you lean into or pick up an interest in the investigation space. What was it?
I joined the industry in 2009, and I think it's fair to say it wasn't something that anyone really knew anything about. It wasn't the case that investigations firms were going to job fairs at university. Maybe there was some publicity, but frankly, it wasn't anything that I was really looking at. Although I always loved spy stories and adventure stories and those kind of things. And I remember somebody a teacher saying to me when I was younger, when you grow up, you're never going to do a normal kind of job. I thought
that's interesting. Why is that? Because you weren't a normal student, is that right?
I did. I think it was my drama teacher. So they probably thought, okay, prima donna that we've got is probably not going to work in IT, maybe. But I graduated in 2009, so right into the economic crisis. Frankly, when I started university, I thought maybe I'll get a job, I don't know, in banking and some kind of research position. But I always knew I wanted to do something that had that was very international, had a lot of travel to it. And 2009 came around, graduating, didn't really know what I wanted to do because the world that I was expecting to graduate into didn't really exist anymore. And like quite a lot of people actually in investigations, I got an introduction to a firm that was just setting up, and I was graduating in Russian and Italian. They needed a Russian language researcher. And I thought, I don't really know what I want to do with my life, but this is interesting. So I'll give this a go. And then 15, 16 years later, I'm still here. So it clearly worked out.
Clearly,
It found me, I think, is how it goes.
no, that's fine. And when you were studying, you briefly touched on it. Did you have any particular vision as to what you wanted to be? Did you have investment banker written all over your forehead, or what were your parents hoping you would be?
I don't think they've never pushed for a particular career or a particular path in life. I always wanted. So my dad's in oil, and when I was little, he was going off all over the world doing these sort of oil deals and traveling, and car would come very early in the morning and pick him up, and off he'd go. And I thought, I want that. I don't really know what it is as such, but that, like, I want to be the person for whom the car comes early in the morning to go off to do exciting things somewhere else. That's what I wanted. And that's not really something you can take to a kind of career center. What do you like? I would like excitement, please. And I'd like a 5
Well,
a.m.
that is interesting because
Thank
part
you.
of my bits, or part of the bits I've picked up over the last 2 months of doing the podcast, is trying to identify certain things that we all of us in this space have in common. And so far, I don't think anyone's disproved or come outside of my classification. Is that investigators and people in this space, we like thrill, we like stimulation, and we like the chase. And there are some people that would, walk a million miles to be away from that kind of energy and stress. And then there are others like you and like me who are inexorably drawn towards what the hell is going on. I've got to be there. It's a journalistic kind of voyeurism kind of gravity. Is that what you've got, do you think?
Yeah, I think you put it more eloquently than I would. I would just say I'm kind of a really curious, sort of nosy person that needs to have a beak in things where it probably doesn't belong.
No, nosy is good. My wife
Sort of.
says that she could be an excellent spy because she is without doubt one of the nosiest people that you could hope to meet. One of the loveliest, of course, but certainly nosy. So you'd read Spy. Which of the books? Do you remember any of the books that you read that you thought, oh, that looks like fun?
So I guess it was in the kind of 1940s or 50s, there were these books produced called Adventure Stories for Boys. And my parents had them on the shelf. And I sort of thought, well, what are the boys doing that I'm not doing? So I got these adventure stories and read all of the Enid Blyton Famous Five and all of their
Oh, I
mysteries, and
love them.
pretty convinced that if you dropped me onto an island, I could competently build a hut and survive. And then I started the guy, I can't remember his name, who did Horrible Histories. He brought out a series of books when I was probably 11 that was about, it was spy stories. He'd gone and found MI6 operators and US intelligence and things, and their stories of being captured and evading capture or escaping. And I just absolutely loved those books. They're thrilling and they're just complete escapism.
So why didn't you think of, sorry to interrupt you, did you ever think of going into the intelligence service?
No, because I also was, when I was younger, I was very shy. So I escaped into these books. But the notion of saying going out and sort of talking to strangers, I wouldn't even phone up a takeaway restaurant to place an order. So I escaped into them, but I didn't. It was when I was older, I thought I actually really like this. But at the time I thought, oh my goodness, that's a bit scary.
So how do you get over? I mean, it's a real achievement. So well done you to get over that kind of, it's some kind of morphic kind of fear, isn't it? What was it that made you? Was it what was it that made you shy? Do you think, or you just inherited that from whatever environment?
I Maybe it's a possible personality, I don't know, but I think I moved around a lot when I was growing up. So I went to 6 different schools. I was the new person a lot. And So some people in those situations sort of run in arms open, say, "Ta-da, here I am, you're lucky to have me," which is my brother. It's like this. I I am not like that. I want to observe a little bit, test the waters, see what's the vibe, what's going on, and then make my approach. And I think that just sort of continued. That sort of way of operating continued for a while. But I got fed up of being, you know, not who doesn't want to, what thing is this? I don't want to use the phone. I'm like sort of ridiculous. So I just made myself do it. I think sometimes you have to recognize it was something that you don't like. It's in your best interest to learn how to manage it. The same with going to conferences and things or to big events. I recognized when I was younger, oh, I find this a bit terrifying. So how am I going to manage this or learn how to manage this? And I thought, okay, well, if I am very good at whatever it is I'm doing, that I'm in that room, that's tick one. So for me, for myself, I have the confidence to be here because I know I should be here. And then the second one is just exposure. You just do it over and over and over again. And then you learn to live with it. I'm not the same as, say, some of my friends who are massive extroverts who just walk into a crowd of people and think, I imagine this is you, Gary, just walk into a crowd of people and think, hello, everybody, it's me. I'm probably not, I'm never going to get to that stage, but
You
you
never
just,
know. You never know.
well,
It might.
maybe. Um, but yeah, I just thought, okay, well, I don't like this status quo, so I'll
So you're
change.
quite a self-aware person to have started to deal with something like that. Would you say that that has helped you in whatever you do, what you do as an investigator? Do you think that knowing yourself and being aware of your strengths and weaknesses is a really important part of it?
I I think it is. I think one can become a bit too trapped by it as well. It depends. If you think, okay, I'm very good at these things, so I will do more of them, but I will also then work with and bring in people who are good at the things that I'm not very good at. I think that's a great level of self-awareness to have. Um, if it goes too much into that sort of introspection, you can trap yourself in there if you think these are my weaknesses, so then you won't try at them. If you think, well, I'm never going to be an Olympic long distance runner, I'm never going to be Mo Farah, so why would I ever get on a treadmill? Then it's very self-limiting. So I think that there's an ideal point of self-awareness that is helpful in what you do personally and also what you do professionally. But I think you should also be willing to sort of push your limits or work on your weaknesses sometimes, rather than think, okay, this is me, I'm static, I'm not going to change.
That sounds like a really good life philosophy. And are you a somebody that engages in any of the yogic meditation? What do you do to relax and to sort of de-stress yourself?
I would say after anything we've said in the conversation thus far, do you think I would be any good at yoga?
Well, funny you should say that, but I took it up about 20 years ago. But anyway, clearly that's not you. You like to
I've
what
tried.
you've tried, okay,
I
but it's
yeah.
finding that inner peace that you're finding difficult, right?
I tried yoga and I was at a very nice yoga studio and we were all standing on our heads and I'm
That's
leaning against the
brave.
standing on my head, looking around the room, all the other people are standing on their heads. And I just thought, Jessica, you asshole. Just what are you doing? you are, you are so there's a level of pretentious that I can put up with. And this was several degrees. I thought, how have I got here? What's happening? This is not me. So
Okay.
that was my last ever yoga class.
Okay. So
But I like to think that
how
having
do
been on
you
my head, so
de-stress? How do you
so
de-stress?
I read. Um,
Okay.
Reading
Is your
is my
joy.
relaxation. Reading and music. I love opera particularly. I try to find things where my mind switches off.
Okay.
Um, and those that I find it increasingly difficult, I think we're so bombarded by tech and doom scrolling, all of this stuff, to switch off. But the things that will do it for me will be live performances and reading.
So tell me who has had the most profound impact on your career? Putting your parents at the moment to one side, although you did mention they didn't really have any put any pressure on you to follow any particular career. But in the investigation world that you've lived in, who has had a profound impact on you?
I think actually the person that had the most profound impact on me, and I recognize this more now that I have my own business, actually wasn't in investigations. I did an internship in Italy just after I graduated, and I worked for an events company in Padua for a few months.
Hmm.
And I had a boss there, a woman called Ariana, who was absolutely fantastic. She ran a really tight ship, tough boss, um, but also very rewarding. Ran a tight ship, but a meritocracy. And it was her business that she'd built it up from scratch. We were an all-female team, which is good. It was a matriarchy. It was really awesome. And she had the biggest impact on me, I think, in my career and in everything in terms of how I approach work. A lot of the values that I have are those that I learned working for her. And I think for someone to have such an impact on you in such a short time is quite incredible.
Can you
But
give
she
us
was
an
the person
example
that
of a couple of the things that had such an impact on you in terms of the way she behaved and her values in particular?
yeah, there was a nice evening. We were getting ready for a conference. So lots of the conferences, they took place in Venice. So what would happen is you'd pack up the whole office and move everybody out, less the,
Sounds
accounts and things
tough to
in the
me.
office.
Sounds
But I know,
tough.
yeah, it was really, well, it was the worst of times, honestly. So the office would get packed up. We'd move out to Venice for the course of the conference. And there's so much behind the scenes work that goes into conferencing, everything from making people's name badges and packing up their delegate bags and all of this stuff. It takes so much time.
Hmm.
Anyway, there was a Friday night. I was an intern. I didn't have to be there, but everybody else was. And I thought, well, pitch in. These are my colleagues. I like these people and I want to help. So I was late in the office. But that weekend, I was supposed to go to Florence to visit one of my friends. And Ariana used to bring her son into the office after school sometimes, and he'd play in the box and stuff. He was really little, and he came over to me and he's like, "Oh, my mum wants to talk to you." And I thought, "Oh crap! Like, what have I done? I'm just putting brochures in a bag." Anyway, so I followed him to her office, and she's in there, and she said, thank you very much. You worked really hard this week. Thank you very much. I'd like to buy your train tickets to Florence." And I just thought she didn't have to do that.
Hmm.
And certainly wouldn't have expected it, but it was that kind of. And when I had my interview to go and work with her, she explained how it worked and the thing about going to Venice and things. And I said, "Oh, well, I get to go to Venice." And she said, "Well, if you work hard enough and you're required to go to Venice, but if you don't and you're not, you won't." And I did go. I did go to Venice. I worked hard to just show value and see that she'd get to take me. I get to go too. And that just made an impression on me, that way of working with people. But she would also, you know, didn't suffer fools. If somebody wasn't working, very hard, then that's sort of, you know, shorter career span, I think. And that's the only way to run a business, I think, is that recognize talent, reward it, reward hard work, and don't suffer fools that don't want to pull their weight or contribute.
And did she start off with this concept of a woman-only business, or did she drift into it, or you don't know her well enough?
I never asked her. That's a really good question. And we're still in contact. Maybe I will ask her.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was something that was more organic. I don't really know, but I just know I turned up at this firm that had been going for a while, and we were all women.
So you've been in how many different organizations in that are in the investigation space, Jess?
So I have only worked for two, and then I set up my
Your
own.
own. Okay. So
Yeah.
looking at those two organizations, one of them I know quite well, GPW, um, what was your sense of the ratio of men to women in the investigative investigation industry?
That. So my first firm, I was the only woman. There are only four of us, but it was
I see.
three guys and me. And then, yeah, joined GPW. That was, for the most part, all male partnership. Towards the end, there were a couple of female partners that joined. But it was that at the analyst level, at the junior level, we pretty much had parity between men and women, and that petered out the further you get up, sort of up the pyramid. A couple of female case managers, and then at one point, sort of no female partners, and that is from from old colleagues I've had that have moved to other investigations companies. From what I observed, just looking around the market, and it's small, we all kind of know each other. That it wasn't atypical. That tends to be the structure. Very, very few women at the top.
But quite a lot in the lower sort of analyst strata.
Yes.
And is that as much to do with the individual's choice, or is it the classic long-standing sentiment that women don't necessarily I don't know whether it belongs in the investigation industry. I mean, I know that if you look at the rougher end of the investigative industry, where you're on the street a lot and you're around a lot and you travel a lot, sometimes people would think, which actually nowadays has proved to be a fallacy. There's lots of unbelievably powerful and strong and women around who are able to take care of themselves. But what do you think it is due to, the fact that it peters out as you get to the top of the industry?
I think part of it is that the industry hasn't been around long enough to have had many people go from junior to partner. When I look at a lot of the partners of particularly the boutique firms, they themselves didn't necessarily start in corporate investigations. They came to it after one or two other careers, and which are, a lot of people came out of the military, for example, or maybe the law or banking, but they came out of industries that were very male dominated. They were men that set up in this industry. And so the dynamic of what they came from and what they came to remains the same. It's also, it is an industry that has previously drawn on family relationships and professional relationships and word of mouth recommendation and introductions in order to bring new people in. So if you have companies that are set up by certain types of people, they will then recruit a bit in their own image. So you don't bring in, if you're not open, you don't bring in people from other areas or from different backgrounds. You kind of shut off diversity. I think that's one of the issues now. I think the world of corporate investigations and corporate intelligence is a bit more open, and it still struggles hugely for diversity in many areas.
Do you know any other brave souls like yourself who have decided to go out on your own and start your own business as a woman founder? Or are you the only one?
So only one other, also called Jessica. I've never met her, but she set up her company, I think, last year.
Right.
There are a couple of women in security and close protection and things who Haley,
who started their own business
yeah,
as close protection. That's impressive.
Yeah. So Haley and Kate. Who else is there? I probably missed a couple. There are not many of us.
No.
If I know them by name or know them personally, and whereas if you asked me to list all of the men in the industry, I probably wouldn't be able to.
No, I get that.
Long
is there somebody in a female figure in the investigation industry who has been a bit of, and is maybe a bit of a role model for you? Is there somebody that you really look at and think, you know what, she's done really well, and I like her style, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, and you know what? I've never met her. So, or actually,
okay,
I have.
So we're gonna correct that, no doubt, after this podcast. But who is it?
Very, very briefly met her. So
Ah,
there's a woman called Sam Walker who is at a firm called Field Intelligence, but she was actually a partner at GPW and she was at Kroll for a long time before that. And when I was researching GPW, some reporting came up about work that she had done on the investigation into the I can't remember the name of the guy, God Spanker, the
oh,
banker who was
yes,
found
yes,
hanging under
yes, yes.
Blackfriars Bridge. And Kroll took on that investigation on the part of his family, who always believed that it was murder, it wasn't suicide.
Yes.
And she worked on that. There was some press reporting about her move to GPW and the work that she'd done. And also having studied Italian, I found that case fascinating. I just thought, oh my goodness, like, who is this woman? This is incredible. So I joined GPW and she was a partner there. I think she came into the office one day and sat next to me. I didn't talk to her. I was so scared. Like, just Sam Walker, oh my God. So,
But it's interesting, you've never come across her at conferences or anything like that?
no, I think she left the industry for a while and now she's come back. And then now I've recorded this podcast, I'll be too embarrassed to reach out to her. Now
No,
I've
you
just
won't. No,
fangirled this
she'll
woman on
think
your podcast.
she'll think you've become a celebrity, so you'll be the right person to meet up with. So she's back at Kroll now, is she, or
No, she's at a place called Field Intelligence.
Field Intelligence? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Um,
what we forgot to mention, but we won't at the outro, is mention Strela and where that name came from.
um, yeah, Strela means arrow in Russian, and so much of my career has been linked to work from the CIS or related to the CIS region. And I wanted to choose something which didn't sound like every other investigations firms, which are typically the names of the founders or, really tough sounding things. So, well, like risk and threat and all this stuff in their names. That's not really me. But Strela, it means arrow. So if you speak any Russian, it's a sort of if you know what this means and it works for an investigations firm. But it also
Excellent.
in English and the other languages I speak, it also just sounds pleasant. And I like that, dichotomy of something that sounds really nice, but when you realize what it means, you think, oh,
So, I met you once or twice. We've spoken a couple of times, and I feel your energy is a gentle energy, is isn't this ma'am, slam bam, thank you, ma'am. And yet and maybe this is my bad and my perception, but you work a lot in Eastern Europe and you speak Russian and your name is designed to attract Russians. That's quite a culture clash or personality versus culture clash. How do you get on with a group of people, most of whom I have met, not all of
mm,
them, but most of them are really, certainly when you are being instructed by them, are absolutely just not just more no nonsense, but really quite tough cookies. How do you deal with that cultural kind of roughness, if I can use that word?
yeah. Um, well, gentle is not weak.
No, agreed.
So in cultures that have value strength or a kind of machismo to them, being being somebody that will quietly and sit and listen to what a client has to say, what they want, what their problem is, and being unruffled by it, and then very calmly coming up with some suggestions about what can be done goes a long way. And particularly if it is how you are as a person, that there's a genuineness to it, also works. If I came into a room and tried to have loads of bluster and throw my weight around, it would look funny. I'm 5'3", but it wouldn't work. But going back to your point about recognizing your strengths and your weaknesses,
Yes.
I'm I'm not very judgmental. It takes a lot to shock me, and I will quietly sit there and take in a situation, then decide what to do. That that works because it's also it's strong in its own way. I think you can't go in and pretend to be your client. You have to be who you are, and that works.
Makes
Yeah, I think
sense. makes sense. So you combat maybe brusqueness with gentleness and calmness, and eventually, or sooner rather than later, you get your personality comes across, which is pretty cool, if I may say so, because most of the investigators in this space are quite forthright, and I wouldn't say they have your energy. So I think that in your space, I think you are carving out quite an interesting part in it. So you
If I may
are
add, though, you can also be direct, even if you're being calm, even if you are trying to be, as you put it, more gentle. You can be very direct about what your boundaries are in an investigation, what's going to work, what's not, what is a good idea, what isn't a good idea. It doesn't need to be done with assertion, yes, aggression, no. But you can deliver some harsh truths in a fairly calm way, and people don't necessarily always see it coming, which can be a bit of an advantage too. So
I
I think
agree. So you're
I think it
quite
can
you're
work.
quite good at the tough conversations, are you? You don't flinch from "I'm sorry, guys, this isn't working," or "No, I won't do that," because in my experience, a lot of investigators' time is spent telling clients that what they're asking you to do is absolutely either a breach of the law or morally wrong or just cannot be done with the budget that they've got available. Saying no in a way that doesn't lose you the client is an incredibly important part of any job. But in investigation, it's critical, isn't it?
Yeah, and maybe it will lose you the client,
Hmm.
but you can't keep a client at the cost of your reputation, your ethics, your what you are building. You also can't, if you make a lot of false promises, if you say, yeah, 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 we can do that, we can do that, we can do that, sure, no problem, and then you don't do it, you've lost your client because you're over promising and under delivering. So actually, it's
What's
better
the
for.
what's the most bizarre? Sorry, what's the worst thing that you have been asked to do? Mentioning no names, that you've just turned around and said, "You've got to be joking."
I would never put that on a public podcast, Gary.
I see. Okay, fair enough. Can we, if we
So,
wind it down a bit and come to something that was only because, not that somebody, I'm hoping, ever asked you, would you mind putting a contract out on somebody? Because that's not really investigation. That's a slightly different area of business.
strategic
But
problem solving, I think that.
exactly. But would you please go out and place a bug or hack into the account of? Is it something that people ask you or have asked you? I guess now the more educated people are about what you can't do, the less hopefully they ask questions like that. But what's the, as it were, the example that you would like to share on a podcast?
So I wouldn't like to share an example,
Okay.
but what I will say is sometimes clients will come with a very fixed idea of what it is that they want you to do because they've sat around and they've thought about the problem that they have and what, you know, what they would do if they were able to do things. This is what they want to happen. And this is how it is. And they come to a meeting and they say, we want X, Y, and Z thing. And for whatever reason, those things might not be possible. But what you want to have a conversation around with the client about, to have a conversation with them about, is what are you actually trying to achieve? So a blanket no to a client sometimes is necessary. Or and they know what they want, and if you can't do it, they're leaving. Other times it's an opportunity to work with them, but you have to turn the conversation around. So you say, okay, well, what you want to do all of these things. What is it actually that you are trying to achieve here, and what is the problem? You've started from nothing and you've gone to the finish line, but well, what's going on? And then you can suggest things that are possible and practicable and will assist them. And that's how you can work it. So I won't give an example, but what I will say is if a client comes to you with something utterly outrageous, that you can't do, there is sometimes an opportunity to work with them, because what they're actually trying to do is solve a problem. They're not trying to ask you just to do something just because.
And when you are retained by, I don't know what percentage, how much do you think, what part of your business is being retained by client direct as opposed to being retained by a lawyer and introduced to the client?
It has become a real 50-50 split. And that can be from inter-client referrals, from your name being given out at a conference or some event that you're not even at. Sometimes lawyers refer out their clients to me where it's an issue that's not related yet to a dispute. But the pure private client side of things has grown a lot since I first set up the company, and that's been really interesting to see develop.
That's interesting. So when you are dealing with the client instructing side of life, um, to what extent do you think that they understand the parameters of what you can and can't do? Or do they come to you with a fixed idea of what they want you to do in order to help them solve their problem?
I think sometimes clients come with absolutely no idea of what's possible or what's not possible. And a lot of private detective TV shows are distinctly unhelpful in terms of fostering what can be done and what cannot be done. You see people posing as, oh, somebody from the gas board, and I'm here to get into your house to go and read the meter. You can't do that. That is illegal. And it's on TV, and people think this is what PIs do all day. I'm going to pretend to be whatever British Gas and get in your house. I mean, it's wild. So I can completely understand why someone would come with no idea of what's possible or what's not, because they've just spent ages watching whatever TV show and thinking you can do all of this stuff. Um, and also, clients might not know, because it is unnatural to have to deal with an investigator for anything, be it a commercial problem or a personal problem. It's not something anybody would ever expect to do, or to be in a position where they have to do it. So you probably won't have thought about what it would look like or what's possible, what's not. So you actually get this opportunity to really educate clients as you work with them about what is possible, where the boundaries are, and what can be found and what can't be found.
And in the course of the work you've done, this is a question that I think I've managed to ask everyone. Has there been a time when you feared for your personal safety?
The retrospectively, yes, but not in the moment.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So can you talk to me without names? Talk me around that, what that was now that you look back and think, gosh, that was a bit dicey.
I think when you are driven out of a city by somebody who's driving a little crazy on some very scary snowy roads and takes you to a restaurant, and you are the only two people in there to have a conversation, I was so angry about it.
But about allowing yourself to be in that situation, could you have done on reflection anything differently?
No, I was actually really angry at him. So why are you driving like a lunatic? What are we doing here? This conversation is getting that's absolutely out of hand. Everything can be sorted out, very, very nicely. What's going on? I got into some kind of Women's Institute level moral indignation. That was what came from. I don't know what happened, but tap the surface, and underneath it is an aggrieved middle class English woman who just thinks the situation is very unfair. And that was and I think actually in that situation it worked, because I think if somebody is doing those things to try and sort of put the frighteners on you, and it doesn't work, they feel a bit bereft. They're the one that is destabilized.
And
It's only
was that
afterwards
person
where I thought,
a prospective kind of informant, somebody that had information, or sounds like it, but what was the character, not the character, what was that person? Why were you speaking to them?
as part of a case, it was necessary that I went to have a conversation with them.
So they had something you wanted. What I'm saying is that you would have approached them. They would have said in some shape or form, yes, let's meet. And you would have said, okay, where? And how on earth does it end up with you getting in a car and being driven up the left-hand side of a mountain? How does that work?
Suggested going out for dinner. Oh, yeah, fine.
I love it.
It was somebody I dealt with before.
I see. So you did know them. It's not
Yeah, it
as
wasn't a
if
stranger.
someone listening to this will think, my God, Jessica just met this random witness and jumped into his car and she was lucky to get back with her life intact, right?
No, normally with if you're meeting witnesses or you're meeting potential sources, it's a little bit like online dating. You meet them in a public place. Yeah.
So that's is that the only one you're prepared to share with me, or is that the only one you can remember in terms of you? Have you had any threats made against you when you've got too close to something that people don't want you to find out about?
No, I haven't actually. Touch wood.
Okay, well that's good news. So tell us about a particular investigation, obviously confidentiality preserved, but the nature of it and some of your fairy dust that you applied to that situation. And lo and behold, it changed the direction of the investigation fundamentally. I want to understand a bit about the way you think and how that impacts or impacted a case that you were working on.
There was one where it's just asset recovery. So I do loads of asset recovery. That's my favorite thing in the world. I love it. It's like a global treasure hunt. And a small example would be I obviously looking for somebody's assets and not really finding them. The picture didn't, sometimes a picture just doesn't add up. You know somebody's got money. You know something about them, about their lifestyle, about how they're traveling, and you just think there's got to be something out there because otherwise none of this works. And I'd had some source intel about a property traveled down to the south of France. So I had a guy there. I said, would do some property searches for me to see if something comes up. And then nothing came back. So I had to go to the lawyers and say, I got an extension to look in this jurisdiction because I said that I could really think there will be something there. And I had to go back, tail between my legs, really sorry, there was nothing. Everyone's disappointed all round. Anyway, the guy in the south of France called me up about a month later, and he said, there is a property. I'm like, oh, great. Well, actually, I was having a chat with somebody and the name of your subject was mentioned and this property, and I went and had a look for you, and he does own it. And all that had happened was that the registry had filed it under the name of the lawyer but not the name of the owner of the property, and now we've got it. So that's not necessarily fairy dust on my part, but it just shows if you've got a gut feeling about it, go with it. But it was fluky. There was a little bit of fluke and a little bit of what's the word? Yeah, investigative nous to get this property.
So instinct. So I most of us have got an instinct. Sometimes it's a good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's really finely tuned. Do you have that sort of nose for when someone's telling you the truth or if someone's lying to you? Is that a really a big part of of what you bring to the party as an investigator?
Yeah, I think I do have a good investigative nous. I like to think that I've been in the industry now long enough that if I didn't, I would have been rumbled. I wouldn't have any clients. I certainly wouldn't be talking to you. And it's a conversation that happens within investigators a lot about whether we are born or we're made. I think we're born, but yeah, and it is. But you have to keep educating yourself. you have to keep up to date with changes on structures and tax treaties and which jurisdictions are popular for money from, or, individuals from whatever countries. There's always a reason behind. So you you get your investigative now, so dealing with enough sources, talking to enough witnesses. You also, the more time that you spend in the field and learning what is possible and what is not possible, if you're working with somebody and they say, we can't do that, or when you're being bullshitted when you've been around long enough.
And particularly in asset recovery work, we both know that um, it's quintessentially international. When you look around the world at asset recovery, big question, I know, but it's actually not a huge community of lawyers in different countries. Can you um, can you share with me your view of how lawyers, for example, in a civil law jurisdiction, think about asset recovery and fraud? I found that they have a very different perspective than Anglo-Saxon English legal system lawyers. But I wonder what you've come across and how you feel they think about this problem of asset recovery.
I don't get instructed by civil law lawyers very often, ever really.
Okay.
Um, the times where I have, it's been to try and find jurisdiction in England. And I used to go out to Paris quite a lot to try and pitch in Paris and never
Right.
really got very far. Um,
Well, even though is French must be one of your languages, right?
yes. Yeah, I found Paris very, very difficult
Because why?
place to pitch. Um, I was told in one meeting, it was really funny. I was called an Anglo-Saxon in a meeting, and I was given sort of what's what in terms of what's wrong with us. And it was that we're too commercial. We're too the legal scene in London. It's too commercial. We've got the litigation funders. It's all big litigation and all talk about money, which in the French culture no one really likes to talk about. So there was a bit of a culture clash in that meeting. So turning up with the idea about how you could do contingency fee arrangements or you could do the litigation funding can work and stuff just seemed quite unpalatable. But that's, I would say, put off. I haven't been back for a while.
Okay.
Maybe things have changed now for Paris. But I found that, which is it in a way was sort of a bit rubbish because actually there are some on the white collar side, and that asset recovery, particularly things that the state prosecutors are doing in France when it comes to cracking down on illicit funds and asset recovery, absolutely spectacular.
And in terms of looking at pitching as a investigator, pitching for new business, etc., which France wasn't to your liking. What about Italy? What about other countries that you've been to? Have you identified particular jurisdictions as places, particularly with your linguistic talents, that you think, you know what, I can create a niche there because of who I am and the language I speak? For example, Italian. I think you said you were working in Italy. Are you well received selling your services in Italy?
Yes. The places that I find quite exciting actually are Italy and then also Spain, because particularly the links that Spain has to Latin America. Um, what I went to pitch years ago, a Spanish law firm in London, and they had also video conferenced in all their litigation disputes colleagues in Madrid and in Barcelona because they hadn't met investigators of the scale that we do investigations in London, the kind of investigations we do, that international asset recovery. London leads it, really does.
What, more than
Um,
America, you think?
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Why? Why? Tell me
Uh,
why. America is like 20 times the size of the UK or England. You've got 100, maybe 1,000 times the number of lawyers. Tell me why.
because one of England's biggest exports is kind of intellectual, intellectual services and art, and within that, most importantly, is our legal system. And so cases, London brings in really expansive, complicated litigation to it because of how our legal system, it's so organic. You can try new things in front of the judge here, and we work on precedent, and that allows for consideration of new things, of new arguments. And that has made London such a hub for asset recovery. It's not something that is generated. It's not necessarily cases that are generated by British businesses or Brits and you're operating here. Bring in stuff from all over the world. So where asset recovery investigations and the investigation sector has grown hand in hand with the legal sector in London, we have all become so international and so used to dealing with really complex work. What I find with America is that it's not that it is that the cases, going for trial in the Southern District in New York are less complex, but America in itself is such an enormous market that even investigations firms operating in the States operate within the States. And I think that's really the difference, is how we've developed and how the markets operate differently.
So are you saying because, in a funny sense, because we are compact and everything happens in a city and in a set of courts, you get more, you get a better developed course of cases and expertise, whereas in the US, you've got 52, whatever it is, states, and you might have an asset recoverer there and there and there, and it's not brought together as a body of experience. If you go to the States, sorry, do you think that's it? Is that what you're saying to me, or have I got the wrong end of the stick?
No, I think it's more that because America is so vast, there are enormous cases going on in America, but sit within America, or the investigations are.
So we're talking about domestic versus international.
So it's about more of an introverted market because of the size of the scale of it, whereas London always looks outward for work.
Okay.
Or for the most part, looks outward. That's the difference that I've found when I've worked with lawyers in the US. It is for the international network that I bring to a case. Whereas if you're an American investigators on the PI side, they have to be licensed by state. They will know their one state inside out. And you have to look at America operating as 50 small countries rather than one big one.
And what's your favorite what's your preferred way of selecting other investigators to work with? Because although I know it's entirely, you're entirely able to get on an aeroplane and go and investigate somewhere else. However, a lot of people would feel that they need to buddy up with an investigator in Rome or in Florida or whatever. How do you go about selecting which investigator you use to buddy up with?
It depends on what I need, first off. So if it is somebody in a jurisdiction, because they can go to the corporate registry and photocopy every single file that there is and send it to me. But that's that side of things. Or I need a site visit done somewhere because I need a quick check on whether a company exists or what a property looks like or whatever. It will be, do I know the best person in that jurisdiction because I've worked with them previously? After you develop your own black book of contacts as you go over time and you're introduced to new people. But the best way is recommendation. So there are investigators that I know well where I say, oh, do you know a good contact in Sweden? And they'll say, yeah, I actually work with this person. And then somewhere down the line, someone will say to me, oh, do you know the best person in Portugal? I go, oh, yes, actually, this is this person that I work with. So our names get bandied around each other really, really quite a lot. But it's that personal recommendation from people that I know and trust and have worked with to then put forward somebody else that they know and that they have worked with. And that's the best way of finding people.
Random question. What would you have been if you hadn't been an investigator?
If I had the talent, I would have been an opera singer,
Right.
but I don't have the talent. So I wanted to be an actress for a while. I wanted to be an actress. So maybe if I'd put myself down that route, it would have been that.
So do you sometimes do your own acting in terms of going out and meeting people and what the classic sort of human intelligence, sitting there, going in a bar, going in a restaurant and asking people for information? Do you often sort of take on different personalities to do that or not?
Um, not not often, but I have done it.
Right,
Particularly when I was a junior, I wanted to do all of that stuff.
right.
As you progress in the industry, it is a little bit more difficult to do because there's probably more photos of you, or you've got more of a public presence, depending on how you do it, and you can get away with more things when you're younger. Um, but certainly, yeah, I've done undercover investigations. I've been done my fair share of undercover work. I think it's necessary. I ascribe to you can't ask people who are working for you to do something that you haven't done or wouldn't be willing to do yourself, particularly if it's your juniors. Um, because how are you supposed to guide somebody through something that can be sort of can feel scary or intimidating or uncomfortable or be a higher risk, not necessarily to themselves, hopefully not to themselves, but also to the case, delicate for the case you're working on, if you have never done it yourself.
So undercover is a really interesting place for most of the for most of film watchers and TV watchers. Anything to do with an undercover operation, sting operation. Can you think of a particular sting or undercover where you were there as things came to, as it were, fruition, and either your identity was blown, or as you see in the films, you get taken away or go off in a situation so that it doesn't show that you were, as it were, the informant? Can you give me an example of one of those?
No, sadly, that's not happened. If
That's
only
not
my life was so exciting.
exciting. Okay. And in terms of the way the investigation industry is developing, can you see any strategic changes that are happening that you need to, as it were, take on board now as an owner of a business, not as an employee leaving it in somebody else's job? You are the boss. I don't know how many co-bosses there are. Maybe it's just you. But what is it that you look at the investigation industry and say, we've really got to change to take into account this, which I anticipate happening over the next 10 years?
I think there are a couple of things. One is when it comes to the work that we do is obviously rapidly changing and evolving tech. So there's a quote in an interview with Sam Altman the other day talking about the changing of what fraud will look like when AI can copy. At the moment, AI can copy a person's voice. So you have these fraud cases where people ring up somebody pretending to be their child saying, "Mom, Dad, I need help, please help me." And it's just sickeningly abusive. And but then when AI will be able to um, mimic a person, so you wouldn't know if you are on Zoom with me or if you are on Zoom with AI pretending to be me.
That's a good
That
question. Am I really interviewing or having a conversation with Jess, or are you an AI generated version of Jess?
I think an AI, I would like to think an AI generated version of me would give better answers.
Maybe, but I don't think yet, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think yet they could have that sense of humor that you clearly have. So it's tech. Anything else?
It's
What
gonna
about
be
people? Is
gonna be a bit.
recruitment an issue? Do you have to look at what's going forward and say, how on earth am I going to compete with the larger companies on the block?
Yeah. So when it comes to work, on the people front, it is shifting mindset amongst generations of what the notion of a good or bad client. When I hear about, I don't have, and I build my team, so I don't have employees. I'm not working with Gen Z, as they are called, but more a generation that is just so much more vociferous and so much more willing to call out behavior that they don't agree with, or corporations they don't agree with. So what does investigations look like if there are industries that you have employees and they don't want to work with them because they don't agree with them? And so I think that's one thing that I think about what the industry will look like, or who it will attract. Also, we are not diverse as an industry, and I'm not sure if firms out there, the bigger ones, have more active policies about how to increase their diversity. But as the work becomes more, it already is very international, but as wealth shifts, clients change, work will only ever, I think, really only ever be international from this point because of the way the world is. You you need to look more like your clients. You need to be more reflective of the world that you are in, not just reflective of a tiny little piece of one city's society, which is a bit how investigations looks at the moment. I think that's gonna have to change. You
Did
need
you did you
new
just say
ideas.
that you don't have any? Sorry to interrupt you. Did you say you don't have any employees? That people you work are sort of services, or you work together with other people who are also independent service providers?
So I build my teams according to what I need for a client mandate. So once I've scoped it, and I do an enormous amount of investigation myself, but once I've got the kind of the lay of the land, then I bring in the expertise that I need, be that in, I don't know, forensic tech, or I need an investigator in a particular jurisdiction to go and get things that I can't do remotely, and bring in the experts that I
I
need
see.
to get the job done.
Do you see yourself growing into a GPW, Jess, and having a group of employees and, as it were, putting a flag in the sand as a corporate body with employees, or that's for the next 5 years, that's not you?
The answer is I don't know. I'd need business partners to be able to do that. And I'm always generally keep an eye out, because it gets stressful and lonely when you are trying to figure out case on your own, or
Yeah.
running a big asset recovery, and all of the responsibility kind of is, and the dynamism and the ideas are just you generating all of this stuff. Um, and one person can do maybe one and a half persons work. Two people can do the work of like five people or six. Um, so there's a lot to be gained from having somebody else to work with. So I'm always on the lookout for potential partners to come into Strella. So
And wouldn't it be cool if people, when this podcast goes out, people think that it would be cool to combine with Jess, and in more cool for a women's only investigative agency to be created? That would be super cool, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I mean, notionally, yes, it would be, but I don't. I don't want within investigations women only things. I just want more women. It's like, I don't, if you have an all women's investigations agency,
Yeah.
what it shows is that it has to exist because there's no space for women elsewhere. What I want is if I look at an investigations firm and they don't have any senior women, or they don't have any women on their advisory board, what you are perpetuating is the idea that women can't do this at any level, or that the people that you take advice from or should go to advice for are older men. And that doesn't help. It doesn't help younger female investigators that are coming in. Certainly doesn't help me. So what I would like is just space for women across the board.
So in other words, it could be that a women's only investigation agency will actually militate against what you would like to see, which is many, many, many more women who might be in one business spread throughout the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think having to say we're going to do this and it's only women, the answer is like, well, is there not space for us elsewhere then that we need to there's stuff about there's not a seat at the table, go and create your own table, blah blah blah. No, I want a seat at the table with everybody else. Move.
I love it. Last question, because I have over spilled into your day, Jess, for which I apologize. In light of everything you're talking about in terms of diversity, what difference can you make and are going to make in terms of improving diversity in the investigation industry as Jess Miller?
The first one, honestly, is existing and very openly. And I am a big user of social media, LinkedIn particularly, to talk about what I do and to share my opinions on things and to talk about why more women should come into investigations, why we are good investigators. So I think there is that adage of you can't be what you can't see, I think is very true. And that's not just an investigations thing, that's across all industries. If you look up and you see the C-suite and the board are all men and you're a woman, you think, oh, well, that's going to be fun. So I think by continuing to show up, and that is it's an easy thing to do, but it's also a really important thing to do. I get introduced to other people if they know women that are interested in getting into investigations. I'm really always open to have conversations with people that are just graduating from university, women particularly who want to get into the industry about what it's like, and giving them any assistance that I can possibly do in terms of introductions or guidance on how to do it. So making myself a bit of a sort of, I don't know, pinpoint, putting my flag in the sand as a woman in investigations in that way.
So who knows? Watch this space, and there may be an association. I know there's an association of corporate investigators. There might be an association of women investigators. There needs to be something that I think, according to you, and indeed according to me, needs to spread the word. Boys and girls at university need to know that this is an industry and a vocation as well, that anyone can do it regardless of, and indeed that, as many people will say, that women have an excellent investigative instinct, and they need to think more about it as a career.
Yeah, 100%. It's a fascinating, fast-paced, thrilling, intellectually
Challenging,
captivating, challenging industry to be in, and I really enjoy it. So, yeah, more people need to know about it.
Well, we've come to the end of this lollipop, and I've really enjoyed it, Jess. One of the things I really get out of these podcasts is, unsurprisingly, perhaps, unless I happen to be interviewing somebody or talking to somebody that I have known for years, I get to know people and I get to know what they think and how they think and what makes them tick. So I've really enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't as painful as maybe you thought it would be. And I just want to thank you for your time and sharing what you have.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please click and subscribe to the Intelligence Advantage podcast on Spotify and other platforms.